Sorry. We're now on Memtes Omid Beis. Now, the owner of the ox accosted the shoel who barred the ox, asked him where the ox is, and the response that he got from the shoel was mess. Now, once again, keep in mind the shoel's chai for everything, straight across the board. Even if the animal drops dead of old age, and the veterinarian could attest to that, he still has to pay for the animal because kol adosh shelo, and he's like a bailam. So again, there won't be any chiyuv of asham or chomesh. He'll only pay keren because his oath, which he took to the effect that the animal died, together with his claim, mace, would not have caused any loss to the bailam because by his own admission, he, the shoel, has to pay. Nishbar o nishba o nignav o avad, but in truth, what we find out that the animal was either attacked or it was captured, it was stolen, it was lost. Now we have another case, nishbar. Once again, what is the shoel saying? He's admitting that he has to pay for it because the animal was attacked by an animal of prey. But the truth was that the animal was not attacked by an animal of prey, but rather the reality was who mace o nishba o nignav o ovad. Finally, let's say the shoel responds and says nishba. It was captured. It was, dragged out of the pen. When in truth, who shemes o nishba o nignav o ovad. Nignav. Now the shoel claims it was stolen. V'hu, and the truth is, mace o nishba o ovad, or alternatively, ovad, the shoel claims it was lost. V'hu, and the reality is that mace o nishba o nignav, mashbi aniyacha, omer omen, pot. The common denominator of all these claims and the shvuah to support those false claims is that they wouldn't have in any event caused any loss to the bailam, because the shoel in any event is chaya. So therefore he'll pay keren. He'll have to compensate the owner of the animal for the loss of the animal, but he doesn't get the additional chiyuv of asham and chomesh because those additional chiyuvim are contingent on the fact that he took an oath which potted him up and exempted him from payment, which is not the case in any of these cases. Now, in paralleling the ratio of the Mishnah of the case of Shomer Chidam, we had another case in Shomer Chidam where the Shomer just denied that he ever got the ox. Now we're going to have the similar parallel case in the Sefer of the Mishnah regarding a Shoel. Hey, Chan Shori, where's my ox? I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I never got an ox from you. I never borrowed an ox from you. V'hu shemeis o nishbar o nishba o nignav o nevad. And in any of the above, the shomer, the shoel, I should be more specific, is chayav to pay because he pays straight across the board. So now his taina that I don't know what you're talking about, I never got this animal from you, is a tainus ptur. And now, mashbiach aniv yomer amen. So in effect, the shoel took a shvuah to support a claim that he doesn't have to pay for the ox, when in fact, he admits later on, confesses that he has to pay, is chayav. Chayav means straight across the board. He pays keren, 100, pays an additional chomesh, another 120, and he has to bring a korban asham. Everything fits into place. And now we go on to shomer sachar plus socher, the one who rents it. If you hold that a socher has the same din as a shomer sachar, as a paid custodian, which again is the shita of one of two tanoim. We're going to see back and forth which tana holds like that. The animal died of old age, which means that I'm potter. So it's a real tainus ptur. V'hu, and the truth is, shenishbar o nishba. Whoa, An onus happened. So in this case, his false oath to the effect that the animal died of old age did not cause any financial loss to the Bailam, because when truth actually happened would have anyway potted up the Shomer Sachar, because it was an onus. V'hu nishbar o nishbar, v'hu mes o nishbar, nishbar, v'hu mes, such nishbar, mashpirich v'omer omen, pot. So again, whatever form of claim the Shomer Sachar took, and after his claim, he took a shvuah to that effect, when we discover that what happened in reality, and his shvuah was a false shvuah, would have anyway potted him up, and that's true for all these cases, which I read very quickly, Mace, Nishbar, Nishba, all these cases of ones, circumstances beyond his control, then he's pot. And pot means for everything, straight across the board. He doesn't pay Keren, doesn't pay Chomesh, he doesn't bring a Karbonosh. Again, would he have to bring a Karban Olav Yoreh? That's going to be a sugya of Rav and Shmuel. Next. Meso Nishbar o Nishba. When the Bailim accost the Shomer Sachar, and the Shomer Sachar says, you know what? The animal died. The animal was attacked by another animal. The animal was captured by, gunmen. Vehu. But what is the truth? Shenignavo Avad. Now keep in mind, a Shomer Sachar, although he's potter for onsim, in the cases of captured or attacked and ripped apart by a fierce animal, but in the case of Ganavo Avad, he pays, because that's the upgraded level of shmira that the Shomer Sachar is required to afford, because he gets paid for his shmira. So in effect, his oath was on a Tainus P'tur, which, if we accept as a true oath, would have caused a financial loss, because in fact, what happened on the ground is Ganavo Avad, for which the Shomer Sachar is chayet. Is chayet. V'yomer Amen, Mashbiach v'yomer Amen. He took the shvuah to the effect that an onus happened. Now it turns out it was Ganavo Avad. It's got to pay Keren, add a fifth of a chomesh, and bring a korban osh. The whole kit and caboodle. And of course, we're talking about a case where the Shomer Sachar, by his own confession, took a false oath. Now, to finish up this whole discussion here, with regard to the claim and counterclaim and the oath of the Shomer, we have Ovad o Nignav. So now the Shomer is admitting that he has to pay, because he tells the owner of the animal that it was lost or stolen. Unbelievable. I can't even begin to comprehend what's going on here. A man takes an oath to the effect that he has to pay for something, when the truth of the matter is he doesn't have to pay, because what really happened to the animal in actuality was an onus. So once again, for sure he's potter over here, straight across the board, because we now know that the animal died of extenuating circumstances, mitigating of an onus, and a Shomer Sachar is potter for onus, so he's not like a shoel. And to boot, his claim was a claim of admission in which he confesses that he's chayav, when in fact he's potter. So here the word potter, the Mishnah means straight across the board. He doesn't pay Keren, he doesn't pay Chomesh, and he doesn't have to bring a korban oshim. Now, what I've been telling you over and over again about the underlying rules of the game here now is summarized at the very, very end of the Mishnah. This is the underlying rule that explains the entire Mishnah. Kol ha-mishana michova lechova miptur leptur umiptur lechova potter. In any case where his shvua does not change or cause any loss to the violent, for example, chova lechova, either he's chayav by his own admission for X, or in reality Y happened, but he's chayav in any event. And then you have miptur leptur, right? Like say, let's go back to the race of the Mishnah, for example. The Shomer Chinam says it was stolen when in fact it died of old age. So it's miptur leptur. Once again, the oath does not in any stretch of the imagination cause any loss to the violent. And how much more so in a case miptur lechova. Let me just make sure I got that right. Ptur lechova. Yeah. When the Shomer Sachar takes it, puts forth a claim and takes an oath to the effect that it was stolen and therefore he has to pay, when in reality it died of old age through an onus. That's called Ptur Chova. In all these cases of Ptur. So there's only one last case, one combination, in which he's Chai. And that is Michova L'Ptur. Meaning that the reality is that he's chayav, and we only find that out later. And by his own admission, he took a false oath to the effect that he's potter. His oath, if it would have been a true oath, would cause a financial loss, because when I say true oath, I mean if he would have insisted that it's a true oath. And then he's chayav. What is he chayav? Zeh klal kol shenishbar lahokal atzmo chayav lahachmer atzmo potter. So what's he chayav in this case? Chayiv means he's got to bring a korban oshim. He has to pay keren v'chomish. Now, the last few words in the Mishnah, the last klal or paragraph in the Mishnah is very ambiguous. It doesn't really add anything. It's sort of like a repetition in another formulation of what we learned until now. He says he's nishba l'hakel atzmo, meaning he took a shvur that would, if it were true, would exempt him from payment. Turns out that in reality, he took a false oath, he admits it, and he's chayav. He's chayav. And that's called l'hakel atzmo. L'hakel atzmo means that he put forth a p'tur to exonerate himself from payment. L'hachmer l'atzmo. But if he was a shomer sacher, for example, who claims that it was stolen or lost, so he's being machmer on himself, and in reality it died of old age, pot. So what does this last klal add to the Mishnah? So here there's a long footnote, and it's all based on one of the super commentaries on the Mishnah called the Tiferes Yisrael. I would share it with you if I thought it was exciting, and it sheds a new light on everything that we've learned. But honestly, you could go through it yourself if you like. Tiferes Yisrael on the Mishnayos, published in all the editions of the Mishnayos. It's just a technicality. Okay, now we start the Gemara. Man Tana Arba Shomer. In the Machlokas Tanoim, our Mishnah takes one side, namely that there are four categories of Shomer. Who is that Tana? Oh, Rav Nachman or Rabbi Fua. Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Meir. This Gemara makes no sense. Everybody, a child, a yingle in Cheder, he's 5 years old. He's got pace behind his ears. He knows that they're four shomrim. I mean, this was something we learned with the breastfeeding of our mother. There are four categories of shomrim. What are you hacking a chinik here? Oh, it's Rabbi Meir. Who would deny that there are four categories of shomrim? This is what I meant to ask you. There's a bit of a stretch over here, but he's saying that the Mishnah is telling me that there are really only three categories of shomrim, because in effect a socher has the same status as shomer sacher. Which Tan is that? Rabbi Meir, which we'll soon see is not so, but right now the Gemara thinks it's Rabbi Meir who holds that a socher, a renter, has the same status as a shomer socher because he gets benefit and he could use the object, which reminds me of Prospect Park. But again, you gentlemen are not from Brooklyn, so you don't know what Prospect Park is, but Prospect Park is where the Jews used to go ice skating, especially on Saturday night. And then the Rosh Yeshiva would try to pull us out of there because there were boys and girls on the ice skating rink. But don't tell anybody about this. And we used to rent skates. Nobody had their own ice skates. Today, people have their own ice skates. Of course, now they go rollerblading and all that other stuff, and they buy their own. Anyway, if you rent something, you go ice skating with the ice skates. That's why you rented it. In that sense, we should jack up the Chiyuv Shmira because he has so much benefit for the object. But on the other hand, he has to pay for the rental. We're going to prove from a Mishnah in Masechta. Well, actually, there's a mistake in the text. It's not a Mishnah at all. It should say Disanya. It says Disnan. There ain't no such Mishnah. It's Disanya. That's the Masoros Hashas points us out. So we're now going to prove that Rabbi Meir is dafka the one who holds that a socher is not a shomer socher. Because it says in that brisa, socher ketzad mishalem, Rabbi Meir omer kashomer china, because he's paying for the rental agreement and the benefits that he gets, that negates the benefits because he's paying for the benefits. He's not getting a freebie. Right? So there's no gratis over here, and therefore he's a shomer china. So Dafka Rabbi Meir is the one who equates a socher with a shomer chinam, and Rabbi Yehuda Mekadosi socher. And therefore Rabbi Bar Avua ibchatani. So we have to assume that Rabbi Bar Avua, who was the one who attributed our Mishnah that equates a socher with a shomer socher to Rabbi Meir, he had a different girsa. He didn't have the girsa of the brisa. He had the version of our Mishnah. Hani arba havu shlosha havu. At the end of the day, whether you classify a socher under the category of a shomer socher or under the category of a shomer chinam, Markin Islay, Machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Meir, at the end of the day, there are only 3 shomer. So why do you talk about 4 shomer? Since we were nursed as babies, we had it as 4 shomer. There are only 3 shomer. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak arba shomer v'dineim shlosha. There are 4 scenarios, but there are only 3 categories of chiyuv. So in terms of chiyuv and how to establish a chiyuv, there are only 3 categories. But in terms of how many different scenarios there are, shomer sachar and socher emerges 2 different categories. Although it could be very well, they have the same identical dinah. Now we go through the Mishnah and some of its cases. We're not going to go through all of its cases. Amar l'shonu chinam heichen shori, amar li'echad bashuk, amar l'shomer chulei heichen shomi amar lo, and yodea matasach. Fine. Now, in all the cases that we had in the Mishnah, and a whole slew of them, the shomer is potur for karban asham, because in any event, his oath did not cause a loss financially to the owner of the animal. Well, since he took a false oath, maybe we should clamp him with a chiyuv of a karban olav v'yored, a karban chatas, for taking a false oath. Amar Rav kulam p'tur mishvuas shomrim, b'chayav mishum shvuas bitur. So again, as far as shvuas shomrim is concerned, to add an extra chomesh and to bring a karban asham, they're exempt because their claim and their oath did not cause any financial loss to the owner. But nevertheless, this is shvuas bitur, and he took a false shvuas bitur. And we have a whole parsha in the Torah at the beginning of Sefer Yikra that tells us that if you take a false oath as a shvuas bitur, you have to bring a karban olav v'yored, a karban chatos. So Rav says the only reason we didn't mention chatos here at all is because he's chayv and osham. But if he's not chayv and osham, then the chiyuv of chatos, meaning for a korban olav yored, now reappears. Now there's only one problem with Rav's shita, and that is that we need something called bilahava. This shomer, when he takes a false oath, he's swearing about the past. He's not swearing about the future, because that's irrelevant. The shor that was given to him is gone. And apparently Rav holds that Shavuos bitui, which is a sugi that we learned way back in the beginning of the Masechta, is not dependent upon Isa Bilahaba, that you can take the Shavuot in both the past and the future. So even though you can only take the Shavuot in the past tense, nevertheless you chayav for Shavuos bitui, a korban olav yored. That's Rav Shita. Shmuel, on the other hand, Omar P'turim Mishvuos bitui. Not only are they exempt from a Shavuos Hapikadon, because they didn't cause any loss through their shvuah, their false oath, they don't even have to bring a korban olav yored for a false oath. Why? Because you cannot have it in the future. You can only have it in the past. So Gemara says, "My komif Shmuel sover lesser bilahaba." Shmuel derived the conclusion, lahora lahetiv, and all the drushes that we had in the first parak, that you can only be chayav shvuas bitu with the korban olav yored if the shvuah could be taken in the future as well as the past. But here it's only in the past. For Rav sover isa b'lav. All I need is that shvuah lends itself to both a negative and a positive. So he could have taken a shvuah that the animal died, or he could have taken a shvuah that the animal didn't die, etc., etc. And that's enough to fulfill the conditions that generate a chiyuv of korban olav yored. We have this already way back in the beginning of the Masechta. Shvuah shezarak ploni's tzvar liyam. He takes a shvuah that so and so threw a pebble into the river, and it's isa b'lavu v'hein. He could have taken a shvuah shelo zarak, that he did not throw the pebble, and therefore Rav amar chayav. Because according to Rav, in order to be chayav a korban olav yored for shvuas bitui sheker, all you need to have is isa b'lavu v'hein, and this is isa b'lavu v'hein. Shmuel amar potter. Why? Rav amar potter isa b'lavu v'hein. Shmuel amar potter the lesser lahava. He can't take a shvuah that so and so is going to throw a pebble in the future, because that's not in his hands. You can only take a shvuah on something that's biyodcha. Tzricha. So why do I need this repeat machlokas here of what we had already over there in the past? If we only had the discussion here, I should say would be more accurate, right? The discussion there of a shvuah, somebody threw a pebble into the yam, is b'hakam or Rav. That's where Rav says mishum to be nafshe kamishtaba. This is not a shvuah that's imposed upon him by Bezdin, like our Mishnah here at the end of the Masechta. It's a shvuah that he took on his own initiative. And since he took the shvuah on his own initiative, in an afshei kamishtaba, therefore, if it was a shvuah sheker, and it's isa bilav ubehem, he's chayav a korban olav yored. However, I don't know if I could derive any conclusions from Rav about our Mishnah, because we're talking about in our Mishnah where Bezdin imposes a shvuah on the shomer in order that the shomer takes an oath that would support his claim. So he didn't take the shvuah on his own initiative in a nafshei kamishtaba. Is therefore a shmuel. Maybe there's a logic, which you're going to see in a second what that logic is, that Rav would confess that Shmuel is correct and there's no korban olav yored. And what's that based on? Kid Rabbi Abi. Tiyom Rabbi Abi, kol shvuah shetayon mashbino so ein chayav nolem mishum shvuas bitui. Rabbi Ami has an entire sophisticated, complicated drasha from which he derives that when a person takes what we call a non-mandatory oath, meaning he takes an oath that wasn't imposed upon him, but rather from his own initiative, then he's liable for a korban olav. But if Beis Din imposed the shvu on him, then Rav Ami says there's no korban olav. And ein chayav l'em mishum shuas bit. We would have thought that Rav would be moded to Shmuel in our context because it was an externally imposed shvua based on Beis Din, and therefore we would have applied the principle of Rav Ami that there's no chayav shuas bit. Kamash malon. That's why I need this double repeat. It's not really a repeat now, we know. And now we're going to turn it the other way around. And if we only had the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel here in our Mishnah, in a case of a shvua that was imposed upon it on Beis Din, Shmuel, here's where Shmuel says that since it was the Beis Din that imposed and forced him to take the shvua, therefore he's not chayev a korban olav. But in the case where he took a shvua that so-and-so threw a pebble into the Am, and that was a self-motivated, in his own initiative of shvua, now Shmuel would be moded to Rav, because we don't have Rav Ami's principle. Kamashmon, therefore, I need both cases. Gufa, Omer Rabbi Ami, Kol Shvuah Shadayim Mashbino saying Babi Shum Shuas Pitu Shendemar. Now we get into this very complicated drasha of Rabbi Ami to establish that in the parsha of korban olav there's an exemption in the case of an externally imposed shvua. Shenemar, it says in the parsha of Shvuas Bitui and the Chiyuv at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra for a korban olav, it says O nefesh ki tishava levati b'svasayim. Underline the word ki. That's the key. And the Gemara says, according to Rav Ami, me atzmo. Now, what is the connection between the word ki and me atzmo? Meaning that when the Torah says he took a false oath and therefore he has to bring a korban olav yored, it's talking about me atzmo. He took the shvua under his own initiative. No one compelled him to take the shvua. I'm very impressed with Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish looks through the entire Tanakh. This is before we had computers to do a word search. And he determined that the word ki appears in Tanakh in 4 different contexts, so to speak, meaning in each case of those 4 categories, the word ki has a different meaning. Wow. That takes a lot of research. The word ki has 4 different meanings. What are those 4? Number 1, if, Dilma, perhaps, Ella, but rather, ain't no Ella ki, rather it's this, and Daha, or ki means I'll prove it to you. Now, in our context, when it says O nefesh ki tishava, the word ki fits into the first of the 4 categories of Reish Lakish, and it means e. If. If means, and if I decide to take the shvua, which means I volunteer for the shvua and it wasn't imposed on me from externally, and I wasn't compelled to take the shvua by best. Okay, Rabbi, so you ready for this? Wow. Maseches Shavuos. Tomorrow, Bleed we start Avodah Zarah. Not the fall. We're not going to worship anybody, any idols. And the first couple of blot and Avodah Zarah is Agadita, but it's very nice Agadita, very famous Agadita. So God was very lenient with us. He was Mekil. Rabbi Elazar Omer Kulam P'tur Mishvuas Shomer. In all the cases of our Mishnah, the Shomer is not chayav for taking a false oath of Shvuas HaPikodon, and therefore chayavim mishum Shvuas Bitui. This statement of Rabbi Elazar is really an identical statement of the ruling of Rav. It means to say that when you potter from a Shavuos, a carbon ola, a carbon asham, then Mamela, what steps up to the fore? A carbon ola v'yored, a carbon chatos. However, Rebbe Lazar makes one important qualification. If the Shoel denies the whole story, he says, I never got an ox from you. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw you. I never heard you. He refuses to confess that he is a Shoel. Or, alternatively, in a case where a shomer socher or a socher who, according to our Mishnah, has the same status as a shomer socher, takes a shvua to the effect that Gneva Aveda. That it was stolen or lost. So what does it mean here? Shehu chayav sharei kofro mama. We said that the precondition for the carbon asham is that his taina was a tainus ptur. And that's called kofro mama. So if the shomer sachar or the socher would claim that an onus happened, that it was beyond my control, when in fact, in truth, the object was stolen or lost, then he is causing a loss through his shvua to the bailam, because if he would admit the truth of Gneva Aveda, he's a shomer sach, he pays for Gneva Aveda, but he instead was kofar mammon. He denied paying for it because he claims that it was lost bionis. And therefore, in these cases, where a shol denies completely that he got the object, and therefore he tainis a tainis ptur, and he took a shvur to that effect, which was a lie, and he admits that he lied. So therefore, there's a carbon asham. Or, for example, the case of Shomer Sachar, who claims under oath that the animal was lost by virtue of an ones, when in fact it was lost because of Gneva Aveda, so his shvua caused the loss to the bailim, therefore he's chayiv a carbon asham. Says Rabbi Lazar, he's not chayiv a carbon ola v'yored for shvuas bitui because he's chayiv a carbon asham. Hadron alecha arba shomrim v'slika le mesechta shvuas. So I don't have, I mean, you could say it's vodka, but it's not. Anyway, I wish you l'chaim. And we should be zochem Mitzvah to start and finish many, many mesechtas. B'simcha, b'tov lev, and our learning of Torah should also serve to contribute to the shmir of Klal Yisrael, which we need so desperately. Ken Yiratzon. So, bli neder tomorrow, if 9:30 works for you, we start Masechet Avodah Zarah.